There's Dr. Rajiv Parti is here, and he has an incredible story about his journey to being here today.
First of all, you heard him say, right, my last name is Parti and I'm a medical doctor. So it goes Dr. Parti. And I'm an anesthesiologist, so many times in the morning when I went to my patients, before surgery, said, my name is Dr. Parti, they would say, oh yeah. They used to think that I've taken the name myself because I'm going to give them morphine, laughing gas. This name has been a fun name to grow up with, but sometimes it has landed me in trouble too. I was working in a very small rural hospital, Lindsay, in Central California. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, a lady comes over 70 years old who has difficulty breathing, and her son brought her there. And the nurse panicked on seeing the lady in such difficult distress, started saying, Party, Party, Party. And the son got mad. My mom can't breathe, and he was saying, Party, Party, Party. What had happened was the nurse panicked herself. Instead of saying Dr. Parti on the intercom, she started saying, Party, Party. It has been a fun name, and when I was single, I used to say, hi, actually the first name mine is Raj, and that means the king. So the full name used to be, I'm the king of parties. Okay, now to the serious stuff. I'm going to be talking to you about 2 things in my life. One, now, I was not prepared for that, but I had a past life regression twice, and I want to talk to you about that. My first life regression was with Dr. Brian Weiss. You must have heard about him.
Yes.
But that was about 10 years ago. What had happened, I had an injury to my right wrist, and that became chronic pain. It was not getting better. I was off for about 6 months. And then to pass my time, I was going to these conferences and things. I wanted to see Dr. Deepak Chopra. It was I Can Do It Here's conference, and then Brian Weiss was there too. So I did his workshop, and there in my past life, I saw myself as a medieval prince, a cruel prince, who was whipping the farmers. They were wearing brown, tattered clothes, and I was ordering my soldiers to whip them too, And then I asked for forgiveness from them, and they forgave me. And then 2 weeks later, my hand got better and I went to work. I didn't know what to make of it. Like in present life, I went to the past life and asked for forgiveness. And then, second birth I remember, that was with another doctor, but he's from India, Dr. Newton. And that time, I was a poppy farmer in about 1800s in Afghanistan. And I was taking the sap myself. And I became addicted to it. And now that addiction, when I had my other surgeries, manifested as chronic pain pills addiction. So it was, both the things were related to my past life. And the other thing I'm going to talk to you today is about an experience, my near-death experience, about 3 years ago, which changed my life forever. I became a healthier, happier, and more peaceful person. It really transformed me. Where I lived, what work I did, how I ate, what did I drink, what car I drove, what house I lived, everything changed. And some of them I took a conscious decision, some things just happened on their own. Before I can explain you what transformation I had, this little bit I want to give you a little background about myself. I was born and raised in a middle-class family in India. My father was a very strict dad. I had a mixed feelings towards him all the time. Like he used to believe, spare the rod, spoil the child. And I had my shares of meetings. They were kind of, he was, in today's definition, you would call it abusive. And I still remember him right now. He used to say, when a nail is bent, a nail which you put in, you have to hammer it to straighten it. If the sun is bent, you have to hammer. So I was an average student, but in 10th grade I got into real bad company. I started smoking, I started drinking, I started cooking, and watched the movies all day long instead of going to school. And one day I was caught, and I was in big trouble. Of course I got the spanking. And then somehow, not because of the spanking, there was a big shift in me, transformation in me. that I started from the bottom of the class. I was repeating my 10th grade. I started standing first and second in my class. And then I thought of becoming a doctor. And my mother came to the vice principal to add biology to my subjects. And he was so rude, and tells my mother, "Do you think your son will be a doctor one day?" And he made my mother cry so much. Then that day I realized, and I made a promise to myself, I will become a doctor. And I say that I became a doctor to wipe my mother's tears. So after finishing medical school, which was very difficult, very tough, 15 to 16 hour studies quite often, I came to United States in 1982. I only had $500 in my pocket.
Wow.
In New York. And my friend picked me up. We were 4 guys living in a 1-bedroom apartment. And before I could practice in the United States, I do extra training like residency. I worked myself as a security guard, drove a taxi, sold newspapers on subway station. And the good part was when I was driving a taxi, I would tell them I'm a doctor who is struggling, and they would give me a higher tip that time. Sympathy factor. So after that, I passed my exams and did a residency in anthropology, and that was at Vanderbilt University, Nashville, Tennessee. From there, I moved to California because my sister used to live here. In the meantime, I also got married, and you won't believe it. I had only met my wife one time before marriage. It was just a semi-arranged marriage. Like, I saw her for the first time on 29th January, got engaged to her on 31st January. I only had 2 weeks, and got married to her on 12th February. And then my mother, as if she's giving me a home assignment, homework, tells me, "My son, I want to be grandmother soon." I said, "Mama, don't worry, I'm working very hard at it." and literally we had a baby boy 9 months, 10 days later. So after my marriage and finishing my residency, I moved to California, Bakersfield. Originally I had gone to Bakersfield from Los Angeles only to do a 2 weeks temporary work, but now it's 25 years and I'm still there. Because we grew up in a small town atmosphere, we started liking, and we had friends and everything. Now my goal was to achieve an American dream. I did achieve an American dream, but my American dream became a runaway American dream. My religion became materialism, and my God became the mighty dollar. And I was caught into the extreme materialistic cycle. I built bigger and bigger houses, drove fancier and fancier cars, and like last house, before my present house, was 10,000 square foot house on a golf course and a lake. So much so, like, we had to use iPhones to communicate with the kids. Are they in the house or they're not in the house? And now we have moved to a smaller house. Now we can just hear them. And actually, I tell my wife, the reverse is true too. They can hear us too. So we had to be careful. So I was caught with this bug of extreme materialism. And that was what my life was. I was working harder and harder. Before I built my house, I used to work 50 hours a week. By the time I built my house, I was working 70 hours a week. And I was wondering at times, I used to tell my friends, do I own the house or the house owns me? Because I'm always working for the house. And cars-wise, I had a sports Mercedes, my wife had a sports BMW, and top of it I had a Hummer. And Hummer was extreme SUV, gave only 8 miles a gallon, but I did not care about that because I could afford it. And I used to feel like a king when I drove it, and especially if a little car would cut me off, I would go behind them with a copper colored tank, and they would look up and just move away. I was a bad boy at that time. In spite of all these toys and this material success, my heart felt empty. It was, something was missing. That fulfillment was not there. No matter how hard I worked, how many toys I got, how big a house I built. My life was going on like this. Then, in August of 2008, me and my wife were sitting in the backyard and having some tea, English tea, around 4 o'clock, admiring our own house and where we have come from, where we are now. Then the phone rang. On the phone was my urologist. He said, "Raj, are you sitting or standing?" He said, I told him, I'm standing. He said, "Better sit down." I sat down. He said, "I have a good news and a bad news." I said, "Give me the bad news first." The bad news is that I have prostate cancer. The good news is that is in the early stages, and if we do the surgery, it will be cured. So I was in a state of shock that time, why me at this age, I'm having these problems. And so we decided to proceed with the surgery. We flew all the way to Florida because the expert, laparoscopically, through the holes was there. The surgery went fine, but it left me with a lot of complications. I developed incontinence, chronic pain, that led to depression, and for chronic pain, they prescribed me painkillers, narcotics, and then I got addicted to narcotics. And I was the one who used to write the prescriptions for narcotics because I had a pain practice too. And it may surprise you that nowadays, the prescription pain medicines are a bigger problem than the illegal drugs. Bigger problem, like almost so many people are addicted to Oxycontin, Vicodin, narco, morphine, etc. So I got addicted myself. But then, 2 years later from the surgery, some of the complications were not getting better, especially I could not control the bodily functions. So I went to UCLA and had another surgery done. So far I had total of 7 surgeries, because of the scarring and it will cause more pain and I could not go to the bathroom, so on and so forth. But now at UCLA I got a surgery done, they implanted a device in me so I could control. But 2-3 days later, I started having fever. About it was 101, 102, I was having redness, I was having swelling. So the doctor prescribed some antibiotics, thinking the infection will subside with those, but it did not get better. But about 10th day, I was having severe pain, severe redness, and I had a fever of 105. So they rushed me to UCLA hospital from Bakersfield. I'm originally from Bakersfield nowadays. Originally I'm from India, but right now I'm from Bakersfield. So from Bakersfield, my wife drove, crying, and this was a very excruciating, painful trip to UCLA. And then they put me on heavy-duty IV antibiotics, Vanco and gentamicin, and they also gave me IV narcotic, like morphine or Demerol to take care of the pain. But I was not getting better. So on Christmas Day 2010, they rushed me to the hospital operating room for emergency surgery. And when the surgery happened, after general anesthesia was induced, about 15-20 minutes later, I saw myself floating above near the ceiling. I had an out-of-body experience. I could hear the conversation, and the anesthesiologist was telling a joke, which I can't repeat it, but he was telling a joke, and I knew myself as an anesthesiologist.
Oh, tell the joke. Tell the joke. Come on. We're here. Tell the joke.
You all are adults?
Yeah.
Okay. There was one lady who just had some surgery done, and the doctor comes to check her out how she's doing. The doctor, she says, I have only one question. When can I have sex? The doctor was surprised. Why, and he told her, in about 2 to 3 weeks. But to the patient, the doctor looked very surprised and perplexed. And so she asked, what's wrong with my question? She said, because as an ENT doctor, nobody has asked me, when can I have sex after tonsillectomy?
So you heard that joke while you were out of body.
Yeah.
Not a joke you'd ever heard before in your life.
No. And then I verified with the anesthesiologist in the recovery room. But he said, oh, you must be light in anesthesia at that time, because hearing is the last sensation to go and the first to come back. If somebody's light on anesthesia, they can hear things. That's why if I'm tracking a joke, I make sure the patient is deep, deep under. I don't want him to be thinking, or her to be thinking, what is he doing, putting me to sleep and watching me or telling jokes? So there, after that, I also saw myself, at the same time I was in the operating room, my awareness was in India, seeing my mother and sister sitting on a sofa. My mom was wearing a green sari, my sister was wearing a blue sweater and a blue jean. And it was cold time there, winter. Like here it was 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, it was evening, and they were sitting next to a heater discussing what they're going to have for food and so on, just general talk. I would like to say my awareness from the operating room went to a very serene, happy place, but no. It went first to a place where there was darkness, there was fire, there was thunderstorm, and there were entities with crooked teeth and horns moving around, and I soon realized I was not in heaven for sure.
What did if you could, what did the entities look like?
You know, they had like with horns on top.
Horns.
Yeah, horns. So I soon realized I was in a hellish realm, and I was asking this question, why am I here? Then I was given the understanding. So far, I have led a very selfish, very materialistic life, and I was not kind to my patients. I still remember a lady coming to my pain practice about, ladies, they get longer. And she was about 75-year-old, and she had arthritis. And I just literally in 5 minutes gave her the prescription and walked out of the room. When she wanted to talk to me, she wanted to have a little touch, on the shoulder, or hand on the hand, because the husband was dying of cancer, and she just wanted, a doctor. Yeah, exactly. And I realized my mistakes, and then the hell started fading away. And my father showed up with his father on his side. And my father, like a little boy, shepherded me towards the tunnel. And my father gave me some piece of advice. He said, my son, if you keep your consciousness clear and have faith and are truthful to your own self, the universe will take care of you. And these are the same exact words he had said about 20 years ago when he died from complications in Fresno after a heart surgery. So I'll be in brief, and then in the tunnel, I had a review of my present life again, in detail, the good and the bad. How many people I had harmed, how many selfish I had been, stepping on their toes to get ahead. Because I was the chief of anesthesia at Bakersfield Heart Hospital, so it did mean being manipulative and getting things done. And I also had a review of my past lives, and 2 of the births were what I told you right now. And one birth was, I saw myself as a little child in Rome, I think Rome or where, and as a Roman small child. And from there, my consciousness crossed the tunnel. Crossing the tunnel, there was a bright light, and I was welcomed by 2 young, robust, very lively, very soothing men. And they spoke to me, but they did not speak like with mouth, but telepathically, more like knowing. They told me they were my guardian angels, and there was Michael and Raphael. It made total sense for me later on when I studied. Michael for strength, and Raphael is a guardian angel for doctors, and also I needed a lot of healing in my own life. From there, they guided me towards a light being, and I saw meadows with roses of different colors. A clear stream was flowing through, and there were mountains. And when I was in the presence of the light being, like about 1,000 suns, but it did not hurt the eyes. And I was given the understanding that I will be fine, but I have to go back, but change my life totally. To live a life of spirituality, give up my job as an anesthesiologist, which was very lucrative. Maybe it's not for you guys, I was making $50,000, $60,000 a month. And I'll have to sell my house, drive simpler cars, just simplify my life and be a nicer person. And then when I was there, also the words flashed, A Course in Miracles, which I didn't know what it was that time. And then I woke up in the recovery room with a jolt. And I wanted to go on my knees, where I had just had surgery, could not, to show gratitude for the place I had been, what the joy it had been. And then I verified with the anesthesiologist the joke, and his comment was, you must have been light that time under anesthesia. But the nurse was more receptive. She was, these things she has heard before. And then my life started changing. By my action, or the actions happened on their own. For example, my friend, a plastic surgeon, came to see me after my surgery at my home. And then he said, I like your house. And it was not unsafe. Oh, I said, okay, I've been told to lead a simple life and everything. So he bought my house, and I bought his smaller house.
Wow.
And we just exchanged houses. It was not on sale. It was no real estate agent involved. We just got some escrow company to do the transaction. And then my lease for my Mercedes expired. I did not get another luxury car. I just got a Toyota Camry that time. Because my life, and I also sold my Hummer. So my life literally and figuratively went from Hummer to hybrid. And I got a hybrid car. It gives me 36 to 40 miles a gallon, depending on how I drive it. Because I do care for nature right now. Nature is an extension of our body. And then my nature changed. You know, how I reacted to my wife, how I reacted to my kids. Like with my wife, I became a much caring. I fell in love with her again. Like one of the things I did was, I sent her a dozen roses, and she says, she's a dentist, not a Valentine's Day, it's not my birthday, it's not my anniversary. And why did you send it? I said, for you, with me, every day is a Valentine's Day. And so I became a more caring husband. And then I became a better doctor. And now I have sympathy. I sat down and talked to the patients, but I gave up my career as an anesthesiologist to become a healer of the soul, to help people with addictions, with chronic pain and depression. Depression was one thing which I had to fight a lot when all these things were going in my life. The most amazing thing was that I was from a brink of sepsis, septic, which is severe infection. I got better in 72 hours and I was discharged home. I still had open wounds, which took a few weeks to heal, but I was fit enough to be discharged home. My addiction to the narcotics was gone. And then I was remembering the 12th step, like Bill says, one of the easiest way our addiction gets better is when you have a spiritual experience. And this was my spiritual experience. But the depression did not go right away. It gradually went away because the doctor was on 3 antidepressants and to gradually taper them off. So there are no more side effects. And from there, I realized my purpose is to be, as I said, to be healer. And the three truths which I realized in the realm, number one was that there is life after death, and we all are connected to each other, for we are all made of love. And there is a loving entity, the supreme intelligence, which is the basis of all what exists. Then I started studying the course, and from my study of the course and experience from the other realm, I formulated a mantra for myself on which I'm writing it, a book also on that: forgive, love, and heal. And forgiveness I wrote first because forgiveness is the ground on which the healing takes place. And the hardest for me was to forgive myself. Like I was upset, like why did I get addicted to these things? Why? Then I had to forgive God even, because I was very mad at God. Why did you have messed my life up? Like it was already messed from inside, but outside at least it was very good. And then I started loving myself, started loving others, and then the healing happened. I can keep going, but I'll just...
All right, well that's fantastic. Very good. No, we're not done yet. Go ahead, one more thing, go ahead.
One sentence, like I used to put people to sleep, now I wake them up.
That's good.
Dr. Parti,
Yes, sir.
when you were out of your body and visited India, did you see anything happening with your family that you couldn't have guessed and then later corroborated actually happened?
The clothes they were wearing, like that was more collaboration than just discussing food. Because my mom was wearing a green sari and I don't know which sari she wears which day. And I did verify with her about 5-6 years later, what were you guys doing on that particular Christmas day, Christmas Eve. No, it was Christmas evening. Yeah.
Z, you have a question?
Dr.
Party.
Party, thank you. When you were talking about your abusive father, did it ever cross your mind that perhaps in a former life you whipped him?
It did not cross, that time I was young, but now I think that was possible.
Right.
It is possible that the law of karma, I'm getting paid what I did. Because he was whipped by his dad, and his dad was whipped by his dad. So it was continuing. At least I have broken this cycle that I didn't whip my kids. Though I have been abusive to them before my NDE verbally. But at least I said I'll draw a line. I won't whip them. So when they were small, I may have slapped them once or twice, but not. Like when I was caught in 10th grade, I was hit with a cricket bat. You can just imagine a baseball bat. I had blue marks that I could not go to school for 3 weeks. Black and blue marks.
Well, have you forgiven him?
When after my NDE, I wrote for my mantra is forgive, love and heal. As a part of forgiving, I wrote a letter to him and then I burned that letter.
So that's a gift that he gave to you
Yeah.
that you can now thank him for. Very difficult gift,
Very difficult.
but also a gift.
And also in my NDE, he was the one who came to my rescue when I was in the hellish run and guided me towards the tunnel.
Brilliant. All right, everybody, on that. Oh, Gary, sorry, go ahead.
Just one, it's a quick question, it's a really long answer, so I'll just ask the question really as a brief comment. Your experiences, actually all three of your experiences are extraordinary and very meaningful, both to you personally, but also to the greater community. And we're having a very precious moment right now, because until very recently, we didn't have microphones.
Yeah.
We didn't have airplanes. We didn't have the capability to be all in this room at the same time, having this special moment, and also hearing the fact that that somehow the veil is getting thinner. Somehow we're having these conversations about not just near-death experiences and so on, and communicating with one's sons and the like, but also this notion that we can have life between life experiences, that we can have a healing of the soul, for example, and have it be consistent with contemporary science. Something's changing in our species' awareness, talk about waking up as opposed to going to sleep, that we didn't have as a culture, or multiple cultures, even though the Hindus and so on have believed in all of these realms. Do you have any sense of why today? What is it about, I don't mean this precise moment, this physical time, but in this collective time, that this awakening is occurring?
Well, I'll tell you what my son has to say, and that is that we've entered the age of the heart chakra. So now it's just entered it, so it's, the age of the solar plexus is going to, die a slow death, over the next, 100 years. But, and even 100 years from now, he said most people will not be born with their heart chakras open, but there will be enough who either get there or are born with their heart chakras open for that to really anchor itself in. But that would be his explanation.
Savarna, were you going to say something? Would you pass it on, please? Thanks.
Thank you.
I was just thinking, have you noticed how fast life is? Even those little nano things, those flashes of information we get, I think all of life is accelerating. And there's consequences to this acceleration. And so I think that one of the responses from Spirit is our growth also is being called to accelerate. So we have such a beautiful story, drop all of that what he was talking about and come into forgiveness, healing, and love. So quick. How much can that impact one person's life and the ripple effect from him? And about the heart chakra and solar plexus, one comment, I'm thinking about the skepticism about all these kinds of things, but there's a way in which I think our intellect can come to serve us. And I got this notion from Raymond Moody, who's very much into Plato. He studies Plato. He loves logic. The NDE things happened in his life, but he loves Plato. And he is trying to help people use logic to come to the conclusion that this is real. There's so many instances. It's just proof over and over and over again. So if you use logic, you have to come to accept that these things are not just woo-woo, not just paranormal, it's really part of this creation.
Part of normal.
Part of normal. Part of normal.